quickly.
Hello and welcome to the IPC's Football Focus Google Hangout. I'm joined today by Great Britain's Keryn Seal, captain of the football five-a-side team for Great Britain. And this is a game for players with very low vision and close to no light perception. And I'm also joined today with the Netherlands' Iljas Visker, who plays football seven-a-side for the Netherlands. And that's a game for players with a physical impairment, most commonly associated with cerebral palsy. Both types of football are played at the Paralympic Games, which of course will next be held in Rio. Keryn, football five-a-side for athletes with a visual impairment, how does that actually work if they can't see?
Oh yeah, hi there, afternoon everybody. Yeah, the five-a-side game is played with outfield players of all total visual impairment or total blindness or no more than light perception, and to equal everybody's impairment, players wear blindfolds as well as eye patches underneath, and the goalkeepers are fully sighted, and we have guides behind the goal that we're attacking and outside the pitch on the halfway line that kind of help to communicate and paint a picture for us of what's going on in the game. The ball is the same size ball as anybody would play football with, but it's got metal ball bearings in it that make the rattle sound, so it enables players to locate the ball. Yeah, you've got one there?
I've actually got one there, yeah. So it makes this sound, and from that you can tell where the ball is on the field of play. That's
right, yeah. So it makes most noise when it's on the floor and rolling. It's, as you can hear, it's a rattle rather than a bell in the ball, which is the stereotype that everybody likes to talk about blind football. And yeah, the rules are fundamentally the same as futsal, with the only adaptation being that we have sideboards down the pitch to keep the ball in play and keep the game flowing rather than touch lines that you'd have in futsal. And that's pretty much our game in a nutshell, really.
Well, what happens like when the crowd gets excited? Can you still hear the ball?
Yeah, it gets a little bit harder. It depends on how many are there, because generally at home we play in front of about 5 people and a guide dog. So there's not many people about. But when it got to the Paralympic Games in London, and there was 3,000 or 3,500 people there, human nature takes over, and when people get towards the goal, the whole crowd starts getting on the edge of their seat and giving the whoo and all that kind of stuff. So it gets a little bit more difficult, especially if the ball hits the post and comes out, or the goalkeeper makes a good save. But you know, sort of everybody's in the same boat in that respect, really. You just kind of try to shut it out as best possible, really.
And Iljas, welcome as well. Seven-a-side, obviously 7 players instead of 11, but are there any other differences between the able-bodied game?
Yeah, 2 different rules. There's no offside, so that's good for a striker like me. You can always go further, and you can roll in the ball with one hand, because some players are not able to use 2 hands. So that are the main 2 differences between the 11-a-side and 7-a-side.
Now, we're reaching the final stages of the World Cup, and last night we basically saw a crippling defeat for Brazil. And with their captain and Neymar not playing, there seemed to be a point where they just kind of gave up. Was that your analysis of it as well, Iljas?
After the first goal, I think that was what happened. 2 best players missing. The defenders did give up. So yeah, 7 goals in one game against it's not possible. But it happened.
Yeah, and how about you, Keryn? Were you following the game as well last night?
Yeah, I was following it with some kind of shock, and when the sort of 4th and 5th goal were going in, all I could do was laugh, really. I mean, it was extremely good football from the Germans, but being in playing in games where things have gone from bad to worse quite quickly, I kind of understood where the Brazilian psyche was after the second and third goal went in that short space of time. You kind of pretty much knew that everything they tried was going to go from bad to worse, really. So terrible decisions made, and yeah, they just, you know, every time they tried to do something, it wouldn't come off, and sometimes that's just what happened. And I think playing in front of their home support with that pressure on them to win their first World Cup since 1950 at home, it was a lot too much for those players that were on the field there.
Yeah. It sounds like you can relate to that situation a little bit there, Keryn. Is there a situation you've been in before, and how do you pull yourself out of that?
Yeah, I've been in quite a few, mainly those kind of situations. We've been on the hands of a few drubbings by the Brazilians themselves, and you know, once you get to 3-4 goals against them, you've kind of got to go into damage and limitation mode and just say, look, there's not going to be any more goals. And they didn't seem to do that last night. They just seemed to give up even when the third and fourth were going in. Sometimes if you know you're on the hands of a humiliation, you've really just got to shut up shop and hope, you know, not make it any worse than it already is. And I think for those Brazilian players, they're gonna struggle to live that down for a long, long time, if ever, really.
How about you, Iljas? Have you ever been in that situation?
Yeah, we've got the same problem against Russia and Ukraine. They are good countries, and yeah, when you try to keep them in front, or when you get 1-0 against, then it's difficult to don't get more goals, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's difficult, but sometimes we want to give up when you're 4-0 down, but it's not good, but it happened.
Yeah. Now, Netherlands is playing tonight against Argentina.
Yeah.
What's your prognosis? Are you going to be crying or celebrating at the end?
I hope celebrate, and I hope we will do the same as the Germans, so we have a nice neighbor final. So that should be nice, but I don't know. Argentina has a good team, but we got also a good team, so I'm really looking forward to it.
And what's your prediction for the World Cup title?
I have to say that Holland will win it, so we can party on Sunday.
Well, that's going to be a huge rivalry if it's the Dutch against Germany in the final. What do you think, Keryn? What's your prediction for the final?
For the final, I think Germany will play Holland in the final. I think Holland will have a little bit too much class for Argentina today. Unless Messi does something absolutely outstanding, I think Holland are going to get through today. I think Germany will win the final, but anybody who's read my Twitter feed of late will know I'm doing pretty horrible with predictions. So if I say Germany, I think Iljas is probably going to be smiling because I've been pretty terrible with my predictions lately.
I mean, it must really whet your appetites to see the World Cup in Brazil, and that's basically going to be you guys in 2 years' time playing at the Paralympics in Rio.
Yeah.
What have you sort of taken away any learnings from the World Cup, or what do you think it's going to be like when you're playing, Keryn?
I think the main thing to take away from that is how much the pressure of playing at home affected those Brazilian players, because Brazil are probably far and away the best team at the moment in our game, but the pressure of playing at home in front of your own fans, and I think they're going to have 4,000 or 5,000 seat capacity stadium there in Brazil in 2016. That's going to be a lot of pressure on those players, and I think that, you know, it's kind of an uplifting thing for me to see as someone who's played in a home Paralympics. You know what the pressure's like, and I think that pressure is going to be magnified 5 or 10 times for the Brazilians, because that team's quite well known in the public eye in Brazil, and the pressure is going to be absolutely huge. So if we get to play them in the group stage, we'll have high hopes of getting under their skin quite early. And but regards to the climate and that kind of stuff, it's not too much of an issue. I don't think playing in Rio in September and late August, sort of no hotter than playing in Southern Europe really, and I think we'll be okay with that. Our team's pretty well conditioned, and we'll be well prepared for those kind of things.
And how about you, Iljas? What kind of learnings have you taken away from the World Cup?
Yeah, the pressure for the hometown, it's pretty big, and I never experienced playing against a hometown in the Paralympics, because we in London we didn't play GB, unfortunately, because it's for us it's very nice to play for a full stadium, and you get a full stadium when the hometown is playing. So I think maybe that can also be another advantage. So yeah, we will see if we meet Brazil. We hope so.
Yeah. Do you think because a lot of the players have struggled with the heat and the humidity at the World Cup, do you think that will play a part for you in September? Or?
Yeah, because we also got not the same weather like them, but you can change it. Yeah, we have to practice somewhere there in the country close to it, so we can get used to it. So that's the best we can do. For the rest, we have to play our football, and then result will be good.
Now, I just want to remind viewers, if you have any questions, go to the right-hand side of the screen and post your questions in the Q&A app, and we will be answering them later on. But before we do that, Iljas, you're on the road to Rio now. What are the next steps for the Dutch team to qualify?
We are training now a lot of time at the Olympic training facility in Holland. So in about 2 weeks we are leaving to Portugal, to Porto for the Euros. There we have to qualify for the World Cups, and in England. So we think that's not going to be a problem, but yeah, you have to do it on the moment. So in Burton, England, we have to qualify for Rio.
So next year is the World Championships in England.
Yeah, in Burton at the FA.
At the FA Centre, yeah.
Yeah.
And you say you're training very hard. So maybe some of the viewers don't realise exactly what goes into a Paralympic football team's training. What is that training involving at the moment? What's your average work week looking like?
My average work week, Monday evening I have to go to the gym, and then it's from
Oh, it looks like we may have lost Iljas there.
He's gone. Oh, he's there. He's there.
Do you hear me still?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. You went for a second, but we can hear you now.
Okay, so I have to say it again.
Yes, please.
Okay, I saw the screen freezing, so. But we're training on Monday evening in the gym, then Tuesday to Friday on the pitch with the team, and this Saturday we've got a match in the morning. So it's almost every day that we are together.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it is.
And Keryn, for you, what are the next steps for the British team to qualify for Rio?
Our main qualification tournament for Rio will now be next year's European Championships, and that's being held in Hereford in England. There is qualification available through the World Championships this year, but unfortunately we won't be there due to not qualifying. I think the winner of the World Championships will qualify automatically for Rio. So our qualification is the European Championships next year, which we need to finish in the top 2 of that tournament to qualify for Rio.
So the next football five-a-side World Championships are in Tokyo this November, I think, aren't they?
Right, yeah.
Who are going to be the top teams to look out for there?
I think the obvious one to go for is going to be Brazil. The other European teams there will be France, Spain, and Germany. And there's Argentina, Paraguay, and Colombia from South America. And I think China will be there or thereabouts in terms of the medal threat. Japan have just recently emerged as a very fast developing nation. And I think making up the numbers there will be Morocco and Morocco and Australia, who've recently come up with teams. Don't mean to be derogatory in terms of making up the numbers, but they're very, very new teams, and I think that exposure to the top class game will be a really invaluable experience for them. But I think it'll be between Argentina and Brazil for the gold medal there.
It's interesting because some of those nations, like Argentina and Brazil, are nations that we sort of traditionally associate with able-bodied, but then some of them are also kind of like China, maybe ones that didn't even make a showing at this World Cup. So
no, China. I think China have obviously taken a massive step in terms of their commitment towards disability sport. You can see that through the last 3 Paralympic Games, and football's one of the sports they've really thrown a lot of resources and manpower behind. They sort of opted to sort of stay behind closed doors for about 4 or 5 years before they eventually entered a world tournament, and pretty much since then they've kind of, they silver medaled in Beijing, and they probably underachieved a little bit in London, but in terms of technical ability, the Chinese players are out of this world, and their fitness levels are incredible as well. They just don't have maybe at the moment, the sort of game understanding that the Brazilians and Argentinians and the Spanish have.
And Iljas, what about for football, 7-a-side? Are they different nations who are the strongest, or is it the same with able-bodied football?
No, the strongest in our football is Russia, Ukraine, Brazil also, and Iran. So that's a different country than in the able-bodied. But that's the top 4 in the world now at the moment.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. We've had a question in here from Joe Hive asking, is there much progress in women's Paralympic soccer? It's not yet on the Paralympic programme, but Keryn, do you know anything about this?
Yeah, the blind football is growing in terms of female participation, around the world. In England, there's not so much because we struggle to find enough male blind footballers, and it's even harder to find women blind footballers, even blind athletes in this country. But I think that the teams that have really taken a lead on this are the Brazilians and the Germans and Czech Republic. And in the last 2 years, I think they've all played internationals against each other and even had a small mini tournament. And I think as more and more nations around Europe are cropping up and developing the game, I think they'll, rightly so, be developing their women's pathways alongside men's ones. And I think it's sort of in other countries where you've got a greater proportion of blind people, I think it's probably easier to locate sort of the male and female athletes. In our countries, it's not as easy, but I suppose in countries where medical provision isn't as good, and people tend to lose their sight earlier, or aren't able to have their sight saved, they've got a greater population of male and female blind footballers to tap into.
How important, Keryn, has the sort of London effect been on the development of the sport? Has it changed much in the last 2 years?
It's changed our game in our international sort of game short term for us group of players who are playing at the elite level quite rapidly, because we didn't have a great finish in London. We finished 7th, but we had some good performances against the top teams there. So off the back of that, we were able to secure UK sport funding, which meant the team was able to go full time from April 2013. Unfortunately, due to our European performance, that funding was withdrawn, but then since then the FA have matched that commitment from UK sport, and we're still able to train on a full-time basis. So short term for us players at the moment, the playing group that we have, the London effect has been huge. We're waiting to see what will happen in terms of the drip effect of young blind footballers coming to the game. We've had a small influx of sort of 3 or 4 15 to 16-year-olds join our national league, and I think that's in part to the good media coverage surrounding the London 2012 games. But I don't know if we'll know the full effect really for another 2 or 3 years.
And Thomas White has just asked an interesting question, actually. He said, what increases participation more, the FIFA World Cup or the Paralympics?
Participation for blind football?
Yeah.
I suppose, well, I'd like to think the FIFA World Cup would capture people's imaginations, but then I suppose the Paralympics and good publicity, and especially the sort of good publicity and television coverage we had from the likes of Channel 4 around the Paralympic Games, that helps to push the sport into the public eye more, and I would imagine that kind of thing would help drive participation higher, because parents or even young children that weren't aware blind football existed would now be aware of it.
How about you, Iljas? What do you think will help to drive participation in football 7-a-side more? The Paralympics or the World Cup? Or is there also a sort of general lack of awareness that the sport even exists?
Yeah, that's one problem. Not many people know about the 7-a-side and for what kind of players it is, because many people are born with CP, cerebral palsy, but they don't know that the sport is there for them. So it's very important that during the Paralympics they have to tell the people that it is for CP players, and to get in contact with them. So the Paralympic is more important for our growing for the sport than the FIFA World Cup, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had another interesting question from Emeka, asking how African countries are faring, especially sort of on the road to Rio and qualification. I don't know who wants to take that question.
Yeah, in the 7-a-side there's no African team participating. There is a team in Ghana, I think, but we never see them. So
yeah,
it's I think the Paralympic sport is there on a lower level than in Europe or South America. Or
yeah,
I think it's similar in blind football in the 5-a-side. There is African representation at this World Championships in the shape of Morocco. I think they played a 2-game series against Senegal to secure the right to play in that tournament. And I think other countries around Europe have taken a lead in going out there to try and help develop things. So I know Spain have gone to work in South Africa, and France have gone to work in Cameroon. But like Iljas says, there's always the names out there of those teams, but it's whether they turn up and whether they have the funding to play in those major tournaments. I've been at 2 World Cups in the past where Senegal or Cameroon were supposed to appear, but they never did because of funds, because it's very expensive to send teams to tournaments.
Mm. Yeah, that's a huge
same problem. At 7-a-side, it's the same problem. So that's funny to see that that they never came to a tournament.
Yeah, we're very fortunate especially with England being supported by the Football Association. That funding is there. If you qualify for a major tournament, you can guarantee that the Football Association will back all of the disability teams. It's just not every country has an affiliation with its own football federation. So I mean that's something that hopefully will improve over the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, where do you think you see the sport going then? Do you think it'll be on a different level come Rio, Keryn?
Yeah, well, I imagine so. Especially in the tactical way the game is played. Since I made my debut in 2005, I'd say the sport has changed probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 times in terms of the styles, the way people play. And when I first started, it was very much sort of 2v2 in one half, and but now there's whole teams defending, whole teams attacking, and that was kind of our problem in London. Everybody had sort of developed that whole team attacking style, whereas we hadn't quite evolved there. And now I think we're getting to that point. But every time you think you've you've cracked it in blind football, another team comes out and starts to set the bar a bit higher and do certain different things. And we're hoping to be that team now. In the past, we wanted to be that team that emulated what the Brazilians were doing or what the Chinese were doing. Now we're trying to work in our own time, especially now we're full-time, to sort of set our bar a bit higher, and hopefully when we turn up to the next major championships, everybody wants to emulate us.
And how about you, Iljas? Have you seen the game progressing and changing, and where do you see it going to?
Yeah, a little bit. I made my debut in 2010, so it's not that long of a period like Keryn, but
I'm old.
Yeah, I didn't say it, but okay. Yeah, it's changing. More attention on the media, and that's always good for so that people can get know the sport. So it's changing, but it's not going fast enough. So
Yeah.
I think for Rio, it's not a big change if you look to London, but maybe later it will.
Yeah. And we've actually had another question in from Rodrigo. Keryn, do you have any traditions or superstitions that you follow before a game?
Not anymore, really. I just had, it all gets a bit too much like hard work to have traditions and superstitions, and I'd end up forgetting them all anyway. I think before I used to always want to come out last in the line, but now I'm a captain. I don't sort of really do that anymore. So, but no, I haven't really got anything, to be honest. I've got too much other stuff to worry about than that, really.
What about you, Iljas? Do you have any sort of superstitions or traditions?
No, not really. Only I listen to music almost all of the day, before the match. So that's something I need to be focused. But there's no strange things like putting left boot on first or something. That's not my thing.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Hip hop. Always
Uh-huh.
hip hop. So it makes me helping me in the right vibe. So and it works for me. So I will do that in Rio also.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today on the Google Hangout. And we've come to an end of our questions. Thanks to all those people who posted their questions for us. And thank you, Keryn and Iljas, for your time.
Well, thank you.